Hello, this is Kip Puterbaugh again from the IVR Golf Academy, and on these videos we're just going to touch on the whole subject of keeping your head down. In my way of thinking, it's probably the most wasted and hurtful thought any golfer can have, and unfortunately it's probably the most taught thing amongst amateur golfers especially, is that if you mishit a shot, whether you hit it left, right, high, low, fat, thin, that you didn't keep your head down. If good players thought about keeping their heads still, I would listen to them. But when you listen to the best players, they're trying to create a feel of going through the ball, and the ball just happens to be in the way of the club. There is no attempt to hit at a golf ball, and they do not try to watch the club head hit the ball. It's virtually impossible to do so anyway. Harvey Penick, in his Little Red Book, said, "In my 75 years of teaching, I have told roughly 2 people to keep their head more steady. However, I've taught virtually every player to acquire the feel of brushing grass." There's a lot of kinetic involved in golf, and that's determining your ability to return the club to a consistent bottom of the swing arc. That does not have to be visual. It can be a lot of feel, and most good players that I know of that I've been able to talk to go through the ball more on feel, and the ball just happens to be in the way. So if we just look at a few players, we're going to find just a few of them here in this little demo that did not do a real good job of keeping their heads steady. Now, I don't want you to think that I'm going to give you carte blanche to move your head anywhere you want. That is not the purpose. But let's just take a quick look at Annika Sorenstam here. You can see that the stamping on this is done in 1993. At this point, she had a lot of head movement in her backswing. The main reason she had a lot of head movement in her backswing is that if you look at her setup, when she started her backswing, she actually had spine tilt that was leaning slightly to her left at address. Most players at address will have spine tilt that would be more to the right. So if she was in that spine tilt, her head would have been probably back more in this configuration. Well, I didn't do that right. But it would be more back there versus where it is now. So if we look at what she did on the way back, all she did was move herself back to where she should have started more at the address. Now at this point we watch her weight shift to her left, and we'll watch what she does with her eyes. Now when Annika was a child, she had a tendency to keep and stay too far behind the ball, and her teacher basically told her to try to feel like her head stayed up with her shoulders and turn herself through the ball. Well, what this led to is that her eyes are pointing down range well before contact, so she would definitely be going to the ball more kinetically. It's kind of ironic that her being from Sweden and Heinrich Stenson and Robert Karlsson share some of the same characteristics, especially with their shorter clubs of having their eyes rotate through the target. So someone in Sweden is telling these players to not worry about keeping their head down. If we went to the PGA Tour, we look here at Robert Allenby, one of the noted best ball strikers on the tour. Just watch his glasses as he starts forward. His glasses will turn to the target. Again, not freezing yourself up by trying to keep your head down, but let everything start to move freely through the ball so you can get a good acceleration and movement to the target versus locking your head down, which is going to stop the body rotation. So that's Robert Allenby. On this next video clip, we actually get a 2-for-1. David Duval is in the background. This was several weeks after he won the British, and you can see that David Duval isn't doing a real good job of keeping his head down. And in the foreground is Joe Durant. Joe Durant's been out on the tour for, I'd guess, some 20-some years. I think he's won 5 times out there. This year, in 2010, he was 3rd in driving accuracy, 3rd in closest proximity to the hole, and I think he was 3rd in greens in regulation. Here's one of the top ball strikers on the PGA Tour for a long, long time. Let's watch Joe Durant go through. I mean, he could be looking at a bird at the top of a tree. There's no way that his head has stayed locked down. If we went to Jim Furyk, 2010 Player of the Year, he is another one of those players that has the tendency to rotate the head forward, so his eyes are not looking at the ball as he strikes and comes into contact. And last on the list, this is the only players I have on my video library, be Charles Warren, who in 2007 was the best driver on the PGA Tour, which is your combined distance and accuracy. I believe that year he was like 20th in distance and 40th in accuracy. Charles Warren, I think, is 5'9". He's not a real big guy, but he hits the ball really well. He continues to be a great driver of the golf ball. But let's watch Charles Warren go through. So if we look at these players, they're not keeping their heads down. Now, this is not what everybody on the PGA Tour does. I'm not trying to say that. But I am trying to say that if you try to keep your head down too long, it's going to impinge your ability to turn through the ball. These players have obviously learned to let the head ride freely. Some players will keep their head down longer, but that doesn't mean they're seeing anything. The club is going by them at 125 miles an hour. If you think of what a player does from the top of the backswing, if we went back to Charles Warren, it takes him 0.3 of a second to get to impact and 0.3 of a second to get to the follow-through. The total downswing is somewhere around 0.6 of a second. In that 0.6 of a second, Charles Warren will shift weight, rotate his hips on the downswing from the top of the backswing to impact somewhere around, I would say, 90 degrees. And then his hips will rotate another 50 to 60 degrees to the finish. So that's about a total of close to 150 degrees of hip rotation. His shoulders will rotate somewhere around 250 degrees, 125 or so back to impact, and another 125 or so through to the finish. So in 0.6 of a second, a PGA Tour player will shift weight, rotate the hips around 150 degrees, the shoulders around 250 degrees, and the club will go from 0 to 120 and back to 0. There is no way that they are watching the ball. They are too busy swinging the club. Good luck with your games, and we'll talk to you down the road.